Reincarnation and Social Problems by Henrietta Windsor Clive, read by Dave Marsland of Cardiff Theosophical Society. Reincarnation and Social Problems. Social problems occupy a prominent place in the minds of all thoughtful people, and the great need of finding the right solution is always apparent. Some earnest thinkers seek to find a panacea for all social problems, but that is clearly an idle dream so long as the egos of such very varied ages and degrees of evolution are being incarnated, and when those who call loudest for the remedy would by no means appreciate its realization. Altruism would be impossible for those who are still in the stage of seeking self-expression, and they will probably have to pass through many lives and to experience the conditions connected with the possession of wealth before they can place it at its true valuation. Among the most pressing of social problems are the education of the young, coping with poverty and destitution, and the treatment of crime and criminals. On all of these questions, the doctrine of reincarnation throws light, even when we cannot arrive at a definite conclusion without more fully developed psychic knowledge. Few, if any, would be inclined to dispute the vast importance to the future of a nation of the kind of education given to its children. Our views on this subject will be considerably modified if, instead of looking at a child's mind as a garden of virgin soil, into which we may plant what we please, we realise that it has within it already the seeds and roots of good and evil planted in former lives, the former needing cultivation, while the latter should be, as far as possible, eradicated. The good will grow all the quicker and stronger if conditions are favourable. The evil may be more readily suppressed if its presence is detected early and before it has time to become firmly established. If the psychic faculties of the majority of the human race were sufficiently developed for teachers to see the qualities and defects of each child, the work of education would be very greatly simplified. Under present conditions, we are necessarily working more or less in the dark, and can only judge by external signs the various capacities and talents which should receive special attention. The idea that all children start from the same point leads to the ignoring of individual characteristics and qualities. The same form of education is supposed to be suitable for all, and so the chances of building on a sure foundation become less, and they lose opportunities of benefiting by what they have learned in the past. But even though such psychic knowledge is out of reach at present, the knowledge that reincarnation is a fact would be a great help in determining the general lines of education. It would be more generally recognised that to educate only with a view to advancement and success on the physical plane is a most short-sighted policy. The future that stretches before each human soul is not the vague shadowy eternity in an equally vague and shadowy heaven, but a succession of lives to be led on earth, for which definite preparation can and should be made, so that the smallest beginnings here are not wasted, but form the foundation for future progress as further opportunities present themselves. The importance of building up character becomes thus more and more obvious, and an education consisting wholly or mainly in the acquisition of external facts is recognised as really little more than a waste of very precious time. There is another department in which the development of psychic powers will be invaluable in deciding our course of action, and that is the education and reformation of our criminals. At present, we are as much in the dark in this matter as in the education question, and we have to confine our efforts mainly to protecting the law-abiding part of the population from suffering by the eccentricities of the thief or the murderer. Our laws are mainly those of repression, and until we are able to see what stage of evolution each wrongdoer has reached, and what line of argument is most likely to influence him, we can only go on doing our best to point out a better course, and to put as many barriers between him and the power to transgress as circumstances will allow. Reincarnation alone supplies a clue to the apparently gross injustice in the chances which each man has of leading a good life, and explains why some are born in circumstances where crime seems a necessity, while others live all their lives safeguarded from temptation and fenced round with barriers against criminal offences. The man whose life has been free from great crimes has no cause to boast, nor to look with contemptuous aversion on the murderer or the drunkard. He is just an older soul, and may very likely have passed through the criminal stage himself in a former life. These elder brothers of humanity owe it to their younger and more ignorant brethren to try to educate and train them to higher ideas, so far as they can assimilate them. The sight of the great differences in the circumstances and opportunities of the various sections of humanity will no longer be regarded with bitterness and anger, but made use of as offering chances of bringing such help and guidance to our weaker brethren as our abilities will allow. Stages of evolution differ so widely in the various sections of humanity that it is hopeless to try to force all men to live under the same conditions, or to lay down a hard and fast system to which all must submit. The do-gooder takes the kind of life which he believes to be good for all men, and he wishes to oblige all to live according to this standard. If they do not like it, they ought to do so, and they must be made to conform to it, whether they like it or not. Human beings, however, will not allow themselves to be treated in this way, and are apt, if it is carried too far, to break loose and show their contempt for the would-be do-gooder in some very unmistakable way. Also, we may find here the reason why it is so difficult for people in different classes of society to understand each other. To those unacquainted with the doctrine of reincarnation, it will be hard to account for the extent of the differences in condition and in the general outlook on life of members of the same society. Such people take refuge in the idea that we shall, in some future day, know the reasons for this apparent injustice, and also that it is partly put right by no more being expected of anyone than he is in a position to fulfil. A far more satisfactory clue to the mystery may be found in the fact that our present life is but one of a long series, that the ease and comfort enjoyed by one man are the outcome of many lives of trial and difficulty, while he who is now in poor and miserable circumstances is a less developed soul who has only comparatively lately attained to individuality. He has been placed in perhaps the best and only position for learning the particular lesson needed for his advancement. With this knowledge to guide us, it will no longer appear strange that the endeavour of men in various stages of evolution to legislate for others in even more widely differing stages should be attended with great difficulty, especially when they try to force on others the conditions which they imagine must be suitable to all. They are indignant, perhaps, at meeting with small gratitude from some on whose behalf they are making great efforts. They cannot understand why benefits should be blindly refused, which to the donors seem so eminently desirable, but which the recipients are totally incapable of appreciating. The ideals of the highly evolved souls must always be above the comprehension of the lesser, while the desires and aims of the latter must equally seem low and degrading to those who have outgrown them. But many think that they ought to do all they can to drag their younger brethren forcibly into a better atmosphere. If this is done injudiciously, it is very much as if a full-grown man were to snatch away a toy from a child and try to persuade him how much more worthy of his attention are the higher objects which he himself is cultivating. In writing thus, we by no means intend to convey the impression that no effort should be made to improve the ideals of others. We have not yet the necessary knowledge by which we can perceive the actual mental conditions of those around us, and, therefore, cannot know if they are ready for that help or not. At any rate, all, or nearly all, must be capable of some degree of improvement and development, and improved conditions of living, such as garden cities, may attract a better kind of ego to incarnate. We shall have, however, no feeling of hopeless depression if we find our well-meant efforts more or less thrown away. We shall be able to go on sowing our seed, sure that wherever it finds suitable soil it will bear fruit. We shall, with confidence, cast our bread upon the waters in the firm belief that it can never be wasted, and that, at the right time, we shall find it again. Even if we are not able to do this apparent good to those whom we seek to help, we are building up our own character and acquiring more strength and experience which will be turned to account in the future, and by means of which we shall in time become more efficient helpers of the human race.